Namaste friends, I would like to discuss why Varnashram was not discriminatory. The word Varna can be broken into Va or Vayu plus Arna or reverse of energy. This means that by doing one's Swadharma, i.e. karmas, practicing sadhana and properly channelizing Vayu Tattva, one can make one's inner rivers of energies flow properly and progress towards moksha, which was everybody's main goal. This would also make a person's chakras work better, and the resultant aura would show different colors, which is why at times Varna is translated as color. It also metaphorically means color of one's karmas. Ancient Varnashram was not the same as the caste system. They had completely different lives and goals. All went to Gurukul, and on passing the entrance exam, which included being able to find certain herbs and grass for yagyas, like the kusha, which grows in vanas or forests, they were admitted. They were very strong, hardy, and intellectually superior advanced people. Once the child entered Gurukul, he was expected to forget his previous identity and was also given a new name. Even his family was forbidden any contact. They were expected to live in the Gurukuls like a family and so forge strong bonds with their Guru Bhais and Guru Bands. A similar system was followed in ancient Spartan society. They believed in the law of karma and so knew that people are born according to karmas of previous lives and so could be born anywhere, not necessarily in the same kula or jati. So there was no reason for them to believe that a person's job is decided literally by birth. Genetically though, many people may show the same aptitude as their parents, just like today. At some point, they were probably referring to the Dvij-born state, which is when a person passes from Gurukul and starts his career. This stage was said to be the student's new birth metaphorically. Even today, a person who is of one profession cannot practice another's until he perhaps gets the necessary qualifications. Also, since ancient Aryavata was a martial and cashless society, each person was trained to be like a cog in the dharmic wheel, and so sudden changes would only upset the system. For example, a navigator in the Navy suddenly says that he wants to join the Air Force and fly planes. Then people would definitely question his sanity, his commitment, and his intentions. They would also need to be sure that they have a suitable replacement. Otherwise, it could affect the performance of the team, which in turn could affect how well they can defend the country. Even if he were allowed, he would have to start studying all over again, which can be very difficult and stall his karmic progress for some more years. In those days, doing sattvic karma was very important, and so it was more about commitment and forming good habits rather than being rigid. Dharmic practices were interwoven with people's regular lives and therefore not very easy to change. For example, today, if a mother with a dozen children suddenly decides to become a career woman, the adjustments that the family will have to make may not be very ideal for their development. We have to bear in mind that in those days they did not use the same sort of vehicles and equipment. Training with swords, spears, horses, chariots, etc. required more hard work, time, and skills. Since other industries were related to the above, such as metal craft, animal husbandry, farming, etc., there would be a chain reaction that could affect many if certain changes were made. During Agyatvaas, the Pandavas did different jobs such as animal husbandry, cooking, Arjun was a dance teacher, etc., which proves that they must have trained in those roles as cadets and so must have worked their way up the ranks to eventually become rajas. Just like today, it was very difficult to break into another entirely completely different profession after getting older. Yet at times we do see that people have changed their vocations. Karna was trained to be a Sutta or a historian, which is a very prestigious role, but later he became governor of Angadesh. Vishwamitra was a Raja but trained to be a Rishi. Sita too was a Raja and progressed to level of Rishi by doing intense tapasya in Ravan's Ashokvan. Ancient Varnashram was based on the level of mantra siddhi achieved by each individual of the society. So, those who attained only a low level of siddhi did those sort of jobs. For example, if a person was good at doing mantras that made plants grow better, they were given that job. If a person had developed more power and was able to make changes in the environment for the benefit of society, he was given the opportunity to do those yagyas. Or perhaps they could do mantras that could use the elements as weapons, like those mentioned in the Mahabharata, and so were allowed to join the army. In the film Last of the Airbenders, this theme has been explored by N. Shyamalan. Ancient rishis did not discriminate against anyone. They were very strict, no doubt, since in the wrong hands, any vidya can be dangerous. So, according to one popular tale, when Karna tried to cheat his guru into trying to teach him Brahma Vidya, he was expelled from the Gurukul since he was very rash, aggressive, ambitious, and a liar, and so by nature not qualified for that Vidya. Anushasan Parva of Mahabharata states that representatives of all Vargas were part of the Raja's cabinet. They all worked together as a team. Ancient texts like the Ramayana and Mahabharata have come down to us through many millennia, not centuries even. Therefore, there are chances that they have been rewritten many times, and so many stories could have been misunderstood due to the changing lifestyles of people. There have been numerous geographical, climatic, and socio-cultural changes in Bharat, and millions of people cannot be expected to behave like clones throughout. Therefore, all stories should be read in context of the life and times of the people. In later years in Kali Yuga, a lot changed, and so we no longer have the Varnashram. The Jati system is also usually based on one's profession, such as farming of various crops, washing, etc. So, when a person asked about Jati, it was similar to asking for passport or references, since it could tell a lot about that person. There were numerous plagues, etc. in those days too. So if, for example, there were records of many farmers getting plagues from locusts, people would perhaps not want to marry them for fear of being infected. They were educated enough to know that some diseases jump generations and that inbreeding can create genetic flaws. Our ancestors also had the panchayat system. The village chose these leaders from amongst themselves, and when their advice was not required, they continued their daily jobs, which could be anything. Sometimes people would commit some crime which the entire village would disapprove of, and perhaps that person and his family would be excommunicated and told to leave. If they persisted on staying, they would be labeled outcasts. In later years, a lot of lecturers who were not very dharmic migrated into the Sanskrit-speaking, highly dharmic regions, and it was difficult to get everybody assimilated right away. So obviously they were labeled as outcasts. But when the Aryas had no choice but to include them in society due to fear of crime, etc., they had debates to discuss how this could be achieved without compromising the integrity of Dharma in Vedic society. It was not an easy task. Even today, it is not easy to live with migrants, since some of them can be very violent and do not easily adapt to the ways of their adopted country. For example, when people read Shakespeare, they understand that those times were very different, so don't try to mix the values or become judgmental. They too had their problems which may not apply today, and vice versa. Once again today, we find that society and lifestyles have changed drastically, and so many of the old rules will not be suitable. If some people today discriminate on the basis of caste, they should be educated rather than blaming our ancients whose lives were entirely different. But we can also always learn a lot from history, So no point in throwing out the baby with the bathwater. Thank you. Namaste.